Very good. Very nice. Thank you for that. That's a good intro. Do your task, guys. That sometimes gets neglected, doesn't it?
So let us know if you're still volunteering.
Volunteer. That's a fun thing.
Oh, and or make sure a reminder no one. Why don't you just say it?
All right, guys. Hey, how do you like the Orcs and Craig? Have you just started it?
Yeah.
I saw a few of you use it for your mesh post. So, huh? The whole book is beginning?
Yeah.
Were you supposed to start it? Okay.
About it like 3 weeks when I started.
It's a good book. It's actually, but it's like it's dirty too. Well, no, it's just it's just I love her writing those. And cool thoughts. All right. What are you doing with it, by the way? Like, what is your project or a product?
Discussion questions or answers.
Okay.
And then it's going to be part of our I don't
Okay.
know what it is, an IOP.
An IOP.
The verbal
Your
one.
oral
Yeah, that gets
presentation.
sent to Switzerland.
Switzerland.
Is it? I don't know what it is.
Very good.
Or is it Sweden?
Something like that. Well, I must say I had a lot of comment feedback from other teachers, other of your teachers, and regarding the mesh post, because I sent that out like, hey, check out what they're doing. They're pretty impressed with, I guess, your guys' ability to connect the two in ways that maybe they hadn't thought to do themselves. So you're teaching your teachers, and they won't admit it, but that's exactly, I think, what you're doing. You did a great job for that first week's mesh post. I was very impressed with what you guys were able to draw together. The only criticism, I guess it's not really a criticism, but just for like next time, just remember some of you talked a lot about ethics, sort of presumably, in part because you read the Plate on the Platypus and there was a chapter on ethics or whatever, and it's probably something that you're thinking about immediately because it's an easy connection to make. It's usually how we view the world anyways. It's through an ethical lens, which we'll get into when we get to ethics, but just to let you know, you want to make sure your mesh post is appropriate for the week that in the connections that we made that week. So have we talked about ethics yet in class formally? No. So your post should really be mirroring and reflecting what we do that week. So some of you talked about like Orcs and Craig, and obviously there's a lot of ethical dilemmas and ethical issues in Orcs and Craig, but you want to try and make connections based on justified true belief. And then this week you can talk about formal logic. But the week that you do the mesh post will have something to do with informal logic, and you can kind of incorporate both. Troy, did you have a question?
Yeah, I was just wondering, so the mesh post, do you send them to the teacher of the subject that we wrote about?
No, I actually just send them the link, and I let them look at all the posts.
Okay.
So you want to make sure, I suppose, that you're not like criticizing your teachers or anything like that.
Well, Troy did something worse.
What did you do, Troy?
I just figured that out.
I read it. I didn't notice anything. Did you say something?
Did you look at it?
I read something. This is like creeping me out now because it's like I'm missing something.
Yeah, you just like look at the colors.
What? Is something wrong with the colors?
A little bit.
He made it red, white, and black.
The whole website or?
No, just his post.
My post.
It's just, it's colors in a certain way.
Why? I don't get it.
Okay, if you want to know, I like my Texas colors look like a German World War II flag. Swastika.
Oh. Okay. So wait, I'm supposed to know that? Like, it's just because the colors of it?
No, it's arranged in that way.
You actually can see the swastika. Oh, okay, Troy. So you should probably not do that. Yeah, everyone's probably already seen it. I didn't even notice that. Maybe I have like some weird filter where I'm like getting rid of all that like gunky text, so maybe not.
Yeah.
That's weird.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you should be. You should feel bad because you're a bad person. Nazi. Okay. And Troy is like the pinnacle of the Aryan race. Look at that. That's what Hitler was thinking of. You know that there was a, I should probably wait and surprise or whatever. I saw an article where there's a child, it's a baby, it's like the Gerber baby or something, but not the Gerber baby, but the Nazi Gerber baby, like the baby that they thought they used as like the propaganda for the Aryan race. Turns out she was Jewish, so that's like an interesting, what's wrong with you kind of thing. Like you guys are dumb. So I don't know. Anyways, glad we've established that Freud's a Nazi and that Nazis are bad. So that's an ethics thing. That's exactly what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about ethics yet. Because we're talking about fallacies, formal fallacies, and today, both with formal and informal fallacy, you're going to be listening for some of these issues, particularly in the informal category today when I introduce it, within a political debate. So you get to see like different language, political language, because that's usually where we see the worst kind of crimes, logic crimes going on is when you're trying to get votes. So we'll be looking at that today as our activity. But one of the things that when you're in conversation with somebody, and then also more importantly, if you're in some sort of debate, formal debate on a subject, oftentimes we immediately skip the formal fallacy and go straight to the informal. So we usually connect it, they're just attacking my person. They're setting up some sort of straw man argument. They're pretending that there's an argument that is mine and it's not. These kinds of informal things. But if you're able to sort of find or ask the question in cross-examination or just in conversation, again, because that's usually where a lot of this will happen, if you can find a discrepancy in somebody's formal logic, that is, you attempt to at least ask the question, okay, so give me your premises. What are you thinking is to be true, and what are you trying to conclude from them? Try to force them, if they haven't already done so, to construct for themselves a modus ponens. To say, okay, if guns are this, then crime is that, or give them some type of setup in which you're able to at least describe either if there's a sound issue or a validity issue within their argument. Chances are you're going to catch them up on it if you have a better grasp of formal logic. You're going to have a more knockdown argument because it's like arguing against math. It's a very hard thing to argue against when someone knows their math better than they do. So just consider how important it is to the development of knowledge, not just to winning argument, but to really having a solid position yourself. Whatever belief you have, think about a belief that you have, a justified true belief, something that you believe you know, so not just some random thought, but something that you know. Could you set it up in such a way as to seem formally logical? You have some sort of thing that you can test rationally. You're testing it sort of rationally based on the modus ponens, some other type of structure. And when we get into fallacy, so just as a brief overview of what we went through, and I was skipping through because I was getting a little tired. I know it's dense, so I'm breaking it up. But when we get to fallacies, that's really where, if you're able to identify a kind of fallacy, or if you're able to just sort of say, look, I think you're messing up this, maybe I can offer you a better way to think about a topic. And that way, in conversation and in debate, you are being sort of amicable in your approach, so that you're actually producing knowledge as opposed to just trying to win something, you know what I mean? And that goes even to any of your debates in Loving Good or whatever other stuff that you have a conversation with. It's usually better to produce knowledge than just to hurt people, and so fallacies are not meant to hurt people. Affirmative conclusions from a negative premises, this is called the illicit negative. When a categorical syllogism has a positive conclusion but at least one negative premise. That would include when you're saying that something's not something, but then the conclusion is sort of assuming that you've distributed correctly towards a positive conclusion, that something is C, after saying that something was not B. Fallacy of exclusive premises is a categorical syllogism that is invalid because both of its premises are negative. Not that they're wrong or that they're not true, but they're negative. That is, they're not something. So if you were to say like not A, not B, then C, unless there's something within the nature of A, B, and C that forces you to have only three options, and therefore if you can knock the two out of the way and you get the third, therefore that one is correct. In fact, I just thought of an example of that. And is there ever a time in which you only have three options in the world? Only three things to do or go. Is that possible to have only three options? Yes. No. Yes. What do you say? Okay, so that would be a good example of a constructed space that is almost logically set up or designed to be that way. If you have in a video game only three paths that you can choose, and you know that it's not A and not B that gets you the best result or whatever, you can infer that it would be what? C, it'd be the last one. So already I'm thinking, okay, the fallacy of exclusive premises, unless it is in fact exclusive, that is that when you have your sort of syllogism that has two negatives, but you know those negatives are the only options, then you can infer the third. That might not be a formal fallacy. Fallacy of four terms, or the quaterno terminanorum. Okay, terminanorum. A categorical syllogism that has four terms, and so it's distributing too many different variables. So usually when you start plugging these in with concepts, that's when you start seeing the errors. You don't really know what's wrong with them usually, but you can certainly see that it doesn't seem to follow mathematics. And then you have these illicit majors and minors in which either the first premise or the second premise are sort of invalid because there's a problem with distributing. And distributing, again, meant usually going from generic to specific or something along these lines. And the same with the minor term, the second premise, if you're distributing it in one set of the premises but not in the other. So you're going in general to specific, but you're not doing the same in the conclusion. So I guess what I'd want you to write down, obviously you're not going to copy all this stuff, but you want to have at least one example or a good example in your brain for maybe two or three of these. Just kind of keeping track, if you can, like affirmative conclusion or the exclusive premises, or if you want to do illicit major minor. Have just at least something where you can talk about formal logic to the point where you have at least one or two of these fallacies in your head. All right, and then you've got negative conclusions and undistributed middles. Let's just go to quick applications, and that way it'll make it a little bit more sense. So the fallacy of exclusive premise would look something like this. No mammals are fish. Is that true? Is that premise true? No mammals are fish.
No.
Is there a fish that's a mammal?
We don't know.
We don't know. But so as far as we know, no mammals are fish. But you're right. Could we say that because we don't know that it could happen, therefore can we conclude that something is true insofar as we don't know it? Know of a counterexample. I would suppose that's most of our knowledge would be to say that, like, well, it's true until it's proven false, and then at that point we didn't know it. Yeah.
But under the definition of a mammal, you can't be a definition of a fish at the same time.
Okay, so no.
Language, it should be true.
It should be true, because by the definition of mammal and fish, they are separate terms. Okay, yes?
I would say that they have to be true.
They would have to be true. So you couldn't see of an example of both a fish mammal, unless we're getting into a debate on transitional forms. But even that would sort of, from a Darwinian model, wouldn't even exist, because mammals didn't, according to that model, didn't even come from fish. So yeah, so it would sort of disrupt the whole system. Okay, so all right, fine. Wow, that took a lot of time just to establish this. So I would say yes, this is true. Some fish are not whales. Okay, you can kind of see this key word here might be some. That's going to throw a wrench into things. Therefore, some whales are not mammals. Some fish are not whales. That's sort of where you have the exclusive premises. It seems like this part here is exclusive, no x or y, and then you've introduced some sort of qualifier, some y are not z, therefore some z are not x. You've added a whole sort of component there at the end that wasn't distributed properly in the premises. So some fish are not whales, therefore some whales are not mammals. It would be an incorrect distribution between the words fish, mammal, and whale. So that hasn't been structured correctly. So we would say that is not logical. Just not logical. It's not even that it's not true. It's that you don't even need to start with truth at that point. with the conclusion because it literally did not follow. You did not establish anything. You haven't proved anything. All fish have fins. All goldfish are fish. All humans have fins. What? So the fallacy of the four terms is probably the stupidest of them all. So look at, behold, the stupid one. All right. All humans have fins in part because you're just introducing this extra term. You have fish, fins, goldfish, and all of a sudden you throw in humans there, and it's like a witch, you know. If the witch weighs the same as a duck, it's like adding all these extra nonsense concepts here. Here's the illicit major. You can kind of see how it breaks down, and it looks. All right, there's actually words on there, so I need to look at that because it helps sort of establish visually the same concept. All dogs are animals, true. No cats are dogs, true. Therefore, no cats are animals. So obviously, with the illicit major, we have an issue with distribution of the top here, and that when you do that incorrectly, so you're assuming that because all dogs are animals, that means you would do the inverse here, all animals are dogs. No, that's not how it works, because there's a distribution. So there's lots of things that are called animals. So just because a dog is an animal, that's the sort of language category that it's on top of, we can't just assume that all animals are dogs. Illicit minor goes in the second premise. All cats are felines. All cats are mammals. You can see where this will get to. So is that true? All cats are mammals? Unless we find some weird reptile animal or you're reading Oryx and Craig, so all these could be totally wrong by now because of all you probably haven't gotten that far. Never mind. There's a lot of hybridization going on in genetics and stuff. That's the central premise of the book. Therefore, all mammals are felines. Therefore, all mammals are felines. So again, the same problem here because of the second premise, the illicit minor. The minor premise is not distributed correctly. All A are B, all A are C. Therefore, all C are B. I hope some of this is sinking in. I know this is a lot of didactic, I'm just like throwing stuff at you, but it's got to be a foundation somehow, and then we get into application hopefully soon enough. A negative conclusion from affirmative premises, also called an illicit affirmative, looks something like this. All cats are animals. Some pets are cats. There's the qualifier. Therefore, some pets are not animals. Now, it might be true at some other level of observation that some pets are not animals. Wow.
They're wild animals, they're not technically pets.
Yeah, but that's an animal, right? It's a wild animal. I am wild. Maybe if someone likes to take humans as pets, even though you can say that humans are animals, maybe someone likes pet rocks. I don't know. So there might be some silly, stupid things you can do to observe that and make it sound, but it doesn't follow from the premises. There's a negative conclusion. All cats are animals. Some pets are cats. Therefore, some pets are not animals. Well, that assumes some type of negative. It's a negative conclusion based on the fact that cats are actually animals. So why would you say that if some pets are cats? It just doesn't make sense. If A is a subset of B and B is a subset of C, then A is not a subset of C. It is assuming a negative conclusion based on the subset structure, the distribution of the variables. Fallacy of undistributed middle. All A's are C's. All B's are C's. Therefore, all A's are B's. Again, if they're from two different trains of thought or types of things, A's and B's, it doesn't necessarily follow that just because they happen to be C's, a distribution of the two terms into one, that they themselves are in fact the same. So money is green, trees are green, therefore money is trees, or money grows on trees, something like that. So that'd be an example of an undistributed middle. You take something that's similar about them and you make the thing that they're connected to the same. Equivalencies. Undistributed middles often happen in political debate when you take two things and nothing is set up formally like this, but you would need to construct it when you listen to it. So I usually hear negative conclusions and undistributed middle in normal sort of conversation, because it's very easy to take things that sound similar, miss the distribution of those things, and affirm some type of conclusion from it without actually going through the real process of establishing the soundness of your argument and the validity of your argument when you are breaking these rules. All right, now, so we just discussed the formal fallacies. And again, formal fallacies are knockdown arguments if you're able to catch somebody or ask them to describe their actual formal logical system. Very, very powerful tool in persuasion, in discussion, in debate, all of these kinds of things. And the reason why we talk about that from the sort of communication standpoint is that going back to our first and second week on knowledge being acquaintance and description, if you can't describe and also defend what you know, can you say that you really know it? Because justification and truth value and truth testing, by definition, should require you to do some type of defense of it. You should be able to talk about it. If you can't describe it, if you aren't acquainted with it, can you say you really know it? So your knowledge can't just be random facts that someone tells you or beams into your brain, and therefore you just kind of know it. You have to be able to articulate and defend back. And that's where you need to have this whole other set of tools that you really don't get, most people don't get until after high school. And that includes the informal logical fallacy. Again, a very powerful tool. Once you understand how people mess up argument on purpose to convince an audience or convince you or convince other people their position is true, when in fact there's all sorts of errors in it. In this case, informal errors, errors of rhetoric, not of math, but of rhetoric. You also can see that it's better to be able to identify knowledge issues when you can see past a lot of this sort of pettifogging that occurs with informal logic. So here's 4 of them, and there's lots more, and sometimes they have Latin names, and it's really pedantic, so just as a warning, don't use the Latin name to identify somebody's informal logical fallacy in conversation. It's going to make you sound like a jerk. You ever seen that meme of, what's his name, like the guy or the bro, I don't know, so the Jeff Bridges guy from The Big Lebowski? He's like, you're not wrong, you're just what? You're not wrong, you're just an asshole, right? So that's what happens when you're like, oh, excuse me, that was an ad miscordium, okay? We don't do that, okay? So try to avoid it. Instead, you can show, again, knowledge by acquaintance maybe. When you're able to apply these, you might be able to discuss it in a way that's affirming the knower that you're talking to. I know it's hard even in debate, but you're going to win actually more votes. It's going to be more persuasive if you're able to affirm the knower next to you, even if you're debating them, and describe these things in a way that's more amicable. Such as, like, if you were to say that someone is having a highly exaggerated appeal to pity or sympathy, you would say, I understand that my opponent is very concerned about this topic, but I think to the point of maybe missing these aspects of the debate. So you're identifying the informal fallacy. Everyone's going to realize that, yeah, that person is going way overboard, pretending to cry and all this nonsense. You know, please, my son is not guilty, you know, on the stand or whatever. She's adding all this extra pity and sympathy to this horrible crime or something like that. You would just calmly talk about that. Yes, I understand, but that's not an argument, is it? When someone's crying. If someone's crying in front of you, is that an argument? Does that mean that they know that their belief is true? And they start crying. Have you ever been in like a conversation where someone does that? It happened once in a Socratic seminar I did in English class. But it was the same girl, I think it was 2 years back, same girl, every single time. At the first time it was like, whoa, this is really like powerful. It's like hitting her, right? But no, it was how she argued. And she liked to argue. So she'd always get it. She'd be like first in the thing. She's like, I'm ready. And like she would have her opinion, and it was okay. She was doing a good job. But then, as normal Socratic seminar, you have people who do what? They ask you questions, and they usually are attempting to show a disagreement. And it's not they're not trying to hurt her or like blow up her belief or anything about the subject. They're just asking because that's what they're supposed to do. Instantly, she's like, "Waterworks, you don't know." She's all like, she's like, "Watch my my tears cover you and make you believe you're like me." I don't know. It was just this really intense sort of emotional thing that she would instantly get into. I think in part just because of being in front of people, it just made it a lot more highly energetic. So I have an affinity for that one because I always think of that girl, like Jessica. That's not her name. But Jessica, like, can you please just like think about your belief, not as like something that you're going to cry over every time it gets questioned, right? I like this comment here. Debate strategy. Win arguments with ad hominem attacks. No, your face is a logical fallacy. I do this a lot, so if you I'm always ad hominem. So when someone like questions me about something, I'm like, yeah, well, you're ugly. So yeah. Anyways, okay. Yeah, someone's like, Miss Morris, you're late or whatever. Yeah, you're ugly. Go away. So I guess that introduces ad hominem here, a personal attack. That is an argument based on the perceived feelings of an adversary rather than on the merits of the case. They're talking about, tax rates, or they're talking about some other type of historical belief about the nature of Germany or during World War II, and you're like, yeah, you're a Nazi, so that's why you're talking about Germany to begin with. Something like that, where it doesn't go anywhere into the evidence. It just attacks the person. You got the Waterworks, Jessica. She's crying all the time, right? She's like, oh my God, you guys just don't understand. That kind of thing. Bandwagon. This happens right around this time of year, anyways, because you got Super Bowls and people just want to enjoy themselves, and so to enjoy themselves, they get on the bandwagon for like one team or another as if they were there the whole time, and then all their updates are like, yeah, friggin' established sports, woo, that kind of thing. So I don't even know who are the teams, so I can bandwagon them. Yeah, Patriots are like my team. Like I watch them all the time. Patriots are from New England, right? I knew that because I that whole thing with the ball inflating too, like right, guys? Like, am I right? Established sports guys. I mean, am I right? I don't know. I heard something about cheating. That's all I'm seeing everywhere. Okay. So, anyways, I'm not a very good bandwagoner because I can't even talk about it, right? But everyone believes it, so you should too. You get this a lot. Hey, like 90% of people think the way I do. So it's right because everyone thinks it's right. The opposite of that would be true too. Like you got like hipsters that like the opposite of bandwagon. Can that be a fallacy too? Like I believe this because no one believes it, so I'm going to believe it. When I go against everyone, that makes me better than you. That kind of thing. Okay. Begging the question of fallacy in which the premise of the argument presupposes the truth of the conclusion. In other words, the argument takes for granted what is supposed to be proved, also known as a circular argument. Circular arguments are fun too. They're usually when you're trying to establish authority based on something, and the person uses the thing that they're trying to prove as the authority or the thing that's already true in conversation. So instead of actually discussing it, they just go back to understanding it again. More informal fallacies. Here's four other ones. Dicto simpliciter, false dilemma, name calling, and non sequitur. I like these Latin terms. There's fun other ones. Post hoc ergo propter hoc. That's like really fast and fun. That one's a good one. Just because it's sort of your post hoc fallacy is when after the fact you're establishing something that you should be actually proving. So post hocs. Dicto simpliciter, an argument in which a general rule is treated as universally true, regardless of the circumstances. It's a sweeping generalization. So that's what the word means. Dicto simpliciter. It sounds like a Harry Potter spell. False dilemma. Dicto simpliciter. False dilemma, a fallacy of oversimplification, an argument in which only two alternatives are provided, when in fact additional options are available, sometimes called an either-or fallacy. Again, there'd be nothing wrong with the formal structure, it would just be that they have left out something that they really need to talk about. Well, it's either this or this. Well, what about, C? You're like, no, it's either this or this. Come on. And we all know it's just two paths, not three, right? Something like that. So it'd be like a false dilemma. Usually when it's not a dichotomy, so A and not A, in the real world there aren't just two options. Name calling. Now, name calling is different than ad hominem. In fact, verbal abuse and name calling and ad hominem are all three different things. So, kind of, the fun world of hurting people with words, right? The different things here. Ad hominem is to sort of attack someone's character. Name calling is literally to say something to their face, label them. It's a labeling thing. That person is a Nazi isn't just an ad hominem, unless he is actually a Nazi, which you're not necessarily ad hominem. Well, no, you're not necessarily name calling because that's what he is. He's a not. But what if a Nazi? Can Nazis have true premises and have correct logic on things? Can a Nazi have true belief on something? They're like, no. So if like a Nazi was talking about the importance of animal rights, which actually they were about, right? Did you know that? Nazis loved animal rights. They're like the first PETA in the world.
They just tested on humans instead.
Well, just only one kind of human that they didn't like. So you gotta give them some break, okay? They have a hard time in history, okay? You gotta be balanced, guys. No. So Nazi says something true about animals, and you go, oh yeah, well you're a Nazi, so you're wrong. So that would be an example of an ad hominem. It's true that he's, Now if Troy, like my original example, was kind of inaccurate. I shouldn't have just called him a Nazi. That was a little bit of a slinging of a name because he's not a Nazi. But it's about unrelated things that then diminish the character. Name calling is just to straight up say you're a jerk or whatever, that kind of thing. And then you can get into verbal abuse and all that kind of stuff, which is where you're just sort of screaming profanity in their face, something like that. Non sequitur, an argument in which a conclusion literally does not follow logically from what preceded it. That's not a formal fallacy, even though it feels like one. It's probably the strongest of them to say that something's a non sequitur. It's literally that they just out of whole cloth added something at the end that didn't even originate at all from the premises. Informal fallacies, and let's see why de facto. Oh, that had to do with the death panel debate that occurred during the healthcare stuff. So that was an interesting, I think, exercise in informal fallacy. The idea that you have certain things that are non sequitur based on argument, rhetorical fallacy that goes on there. So that would be called a straw man argument when you have a non sequitur, something that doesn't follow, and you're doing so in order to establish a position that's not actually the position being taken. So there's a lot wrong with the position, potentially, and you can include that to like the Affordable Care Act or all the other kind of controversial political debate, right? There's a lot of things you can attack, but when you set up something that isn't actually in the system, you're going to have problems from a fallacy perspective. Post hoc, for instance, a fallacy in which one event is said to be the cause of a later event simply because it occurred earlier, so post hoc fallacy. Red herring is an observation that draws attention away from the central issue in an argument. Stacking the deck is a fallacy in which any evidence that supports an opposing argument is simply rejected, omitted, or ignored. And then what I just described here, a fallacy in which an opponent's argument is overstated or misrepresented in order to be more easily attacked or refuted. So straw man, you get that a lot in political debate, and it happens on both sides, almost to the point of regularity. So it's something that you can easily set up if you're talking about, again, political debate, which I enjoy following. You see straw man happen a lot, and it's something that you should really, in part of your own character, avoid as much as possible and call out on both sides when you see it, or on the side that you're on. Red herring, an observation that draws attention away from central issue in an argument. Red herrings happen a lot where you are talking about a particular topic and someone else wants to bring in the wrongness of a second or third or fourth and fifth and sixth topic, and you go into this sort of long thing of defending all these other topics when you're just talking about one topic. So red herrings happen a lot. Straw men happen a lot. Then what I mean by happen a lot, I mean when you have conversation in person with people, these tend to be go-to fallacies that you'll hear, and go-to fallacies that you might commit. And it's nothing. Sometimes it happens. You're like, oh crap, I just did a red herring. But your opponent or the person you're talking to may not know it's a red herring, and so you're like, so you really should call yourself out on things. That's okay to do too. Okay, so that was a red herring, or whatever in your conversation. I think those are all intellectually honest positions. We have 5 minutes. I'm talking too slow and boring. I apologize for all of this. We're not going to get into that blog post. That'll go on next week after you guys set up your Argue It Out on the questions that I posted online. So make sure you're doing the one on violence. But at some point, you're going to actually be interacting with somebody either on a social network or just at home or with friends on a topic that you don't that personally the position that you don't take, and the point of it is to sort of engage them on that as if you're the opponent. So it's sort of like a Fight Club mentality, like go out and fight and lose kind of thing. Like take a position that you don't normally agree with and try and defend it, and see what you learn in the process. I was going to show you some political rhetoric that I think is pretty interesting, and it shows several different sides. But because we only have 4 minutes left, what I'm going to do is I'll post them online so you can review them, and then we will start with them on Monday, and then we'll go into your chapter discussions also on Monday. So got kind of a couple things that I want to do on Monday so that we're caught up. All right. All right, you're good to go. Thank you for listening.